believe it or not, the most important part of FC Barcelona's season is still to come. In 2022, it feels like trophies are decided by who wins and who loses the transfer window. And for Barcelona, it's never felt more true. Much like last January was the biggest January transfer window we've ever seen, this summer has shaped up to be arguably the most comprehensive overhaul of the squad in a long time, and maybe ever. 2014 with Luis Suarez, Ter Stegen, Claudio Bravo, Rakitic, Jeremy Mathieu, and Thomas Vermaelen, and Douglas. That was the last time the first team got shuffled this much. This summer has a similar feel, and it's not just the new number 9 that's arrived. And just like in January, I thought it'd be appropriate to give individual single grades to each and every move made by Matteo Alemany and company, including some for Barca Athletic that I feel like could affect the first team this year. And before we get started, I should say that usually this video is written just as deadline day is here, because so much business is still done on deadline day. But this year, yeah, there was a few moves. It felt good to have this mainly written a few weeks ago. Now, it was still weeks of drama due to the finances and most significantly the global media's perception of those finances, but the transfer business seemed to run pretty smoothly. Well, at least it gets to the players who didn't leave or who were forced out the door with 2 hands on their back, but we'll get to that later. Because we begin with the transfers that came in that are at the top of the class, the ones that move up the entire class curve, and the ones that will be most heavily weighted when I decide the overall grade at the end. I know it feels like a lifetime ago, but Franck Kessié to FC Barcelona on a free transfer was pretty much done before last season even ended. If I was grading him as a successor to Busquets, which is what the initial belief for that midfield signing was, then it wouldn't be a very high grade. Kessié is an interior, and while Gabi is getting early starts, this transfer still gets a solid A. I think the only thing keeping it from being an A+ is that his salary is just around Pedri's, and I'm not sure if he's going to be a guaranteed starter. But getting a talent like Kessié on a free transfer? Terrific. Andres Christensen is another A for pretty much the exact same reasons. Taking a starter from the Champions League winner on a free transfer? Excellent business, regardless of what happens with his time at Barcelona. The only thing that keeps it from being an A+ is similar to Kessié. With Garcia, Araujo, Koundé, and Piqué still floating around, that salary may have been used better elsewhere. But that's no fault of Andres Christensen. He wanted to come to Barcelona, and he made it happen. And what is that emotional paradox that teachers have to deal with that I don't think I could give Kessié and Christensen A's because I would have felt too uncomfortable giving too many A+, right? That's supposed to be for the top of the class. And immediately after giving out 2 A's, I've got to start giving out my A+, and the first one goes to Robert Lewandowski. Yeah, he was missing the goal some in preseason, but after 4 goals in 2 games, if there was even a single person who doubted him, well, that person is quiet again. The argument that he has no resale value is absolutely nuts to me. Even if Barca did sell players on, which they don't if they're usable, Lewandowski might still be worth something when he's 37. But as a transfer for this season, this is a transfer that can help the club win trophies. Right now, like this year. And isn't that the biggest part of what this is all about? Now Rafinha, who is also an A+. Any early concerns that he might not fit in or hit the ground running have pretty much been completely unfounded. He showed in the preseason El Clasico that long shot will still fire in Catalonia, and his versatility to play on both the right and deputize on the left gives Xavi the options he needs to keep the opponent guessing. And the deal itself, 58 million euros. That was close to taking this down to an A or an A-, but looking at Antony going for closer to 100 million and Chelsea signing defenders for more than that amount, it seems like the market value is fair based on the market for Rafinha this season. And my final A+ is Jules Koundé. No surprises there. Prior to the transfer, he had a market value of 60 million euros. But Barcelona were able to get this 23-year-old center back, arguably the best center back in the Liga over the last 2 seasons, for 50 million euros. Knowing what I know of Koundé, much like Lewandowski and Rafinha, this is a can't-miss signing. Koundé will be a success at Barcelona, barring the usual injury disclaimer, something that he's never been prone to. In the case of Koundé, Barcelona wanted a high-level center back who could play with the ball, and they got exactly that. That is excellent business, filling a need for the club. Now before we get into the deadline day moves, let's talk about the internal moves. I did have a bit of trouble with these grades for the internal moves, the renewals and such, because Ousmane Dembélé and that whole saga, that is impossible to grade. On the merit of the whole saga and talking about it for months, I give the drama an F-. But as far as how it played out for Barcelona, the number they got, the fact that they didn't need to sacrifice anybody else, this has to be an A+ as well. I know, an A+. They navigated a nightmare of an agent, awful demands, a timeline that could have sidetracked other transfer business, and they still came out of it with one of the most impactful wingers in world football. There's an argument that he may, at this moment, be underpaid, but a trip to the infirmary could very much reverse that notion. And with all the moves that have happened, I think we kind of forget that Sergio Roberto was renewed as well. And I'll give that one a B. If the intel that came out surrounding the renewal is correct, this was indeed a reduction of his immense wages to keep him at the club. Yeah, not a deferral, but a reduction of his wages. And it was necessary to register the A-pluses I started this video with. I also think there's a bit of an overcorrection on Roberto the player. Any support you're hearing from outside of Catalonia, that's a straw man. I haven't heard from that person. Nobody outside of the stadium perimeter believes that he belongs at the level starting for Xavi. But I think now we're kind of underrating him. He's good enough to be a backup at the right back spot, but more on that in a second. The last internal move other than Iñaki Peña returning from loan and staying with the club is technically the promotion of Alejandro Balde, though he is still registered with Barca Athletic. We saw Gabi and Niko had the same thing for much of last year. Niko getting the full promotion in January, and Gabi, because of that professional contract, well, we're still waiting on that. And it's not official, but it does seem like Balde's time with Barca Athletic is all but over. And he didn't move out on a loan now for the summer. A January loan is possible, of course, but that means it's a three-way race for minutes with Alonso and Alba. I'm giving the promotion a B+, because Alba is still around. Balde has long shown flashes of being the future. I just worry about substantial minutes on Barca's first team in his present. Now, if he is a starter in March, I very much have the right, and this is my video, these are my grades, to turn this into an A+. Because if he is a starter come the spring, then the club has hit a home run. I mean, just by sticking with the player who's had such high potential for so long. And finally, the 2 deadline day reinforcements. There was no big surprise as promised, and I'm a little surprised so many of you fell for it. We were told throughout the summer that if Frankie de Jong were to leave, Bernardo Silva was pretty much done and dusted. And Frankie de Jong is still here, so Bernardo Silva didn't arrive. And I felt like we kind of knew that was going to be the case for much of the summer and the last few weeks, and I think our heart always wants more than what transfer reality really is. And honestly, it is okay to be duped. Culés want their team to be as strong as possible, and I don't blame anybody for wanting that. And to reinforce the squad at the right price came Hector Bellerin on a free transfer. Returning home to the club, he left as a teenager on a 1-year deal with no second-year option. He's 27, made tons of appearances for Arsenal, showed himself as a useful player last year for Real Betis, and his grades should be tied to his expectations. If you think he'll be the every-game starter at right back and make Eric Garcia, Araujo, Christensen, and Koundé fight for 2 spots, then he'll likely disappoint you. But if you think he'll likely split time with Sergio Roberto and be useful, then he'll be closer to expectations. I'm giving this a B because I don't think there was much else out there, and the deal doesn't hurt the club in any way. On the other side, I'm having a really hard time with this Marcos Alonso grade. I've spoken about it before on the podcast. Getting Marcos Alonso to play left back for Barcelona doesn't really excite me, but it's also a move that very quickly I could warm up to. He's 31, pretty good at a bunch of stuff, but I still wouldn't call him one of the best at his position. So I think Barca and Xavi settled a little bit, and the grade should be lower. However, having him terminate his contract and including him in the Aubameyang deal with a transfer fee also coming into Barca's pocket, I'll take that piece of business, and I think Alonso is good enough under those circumstances. His wages also appear to be bottom half of the squad, and it seems he's coming with the understanding that Balde could even start over him. So for that, I'm actually giving this a B. Alright, so since we don't want this video to be an hour long, it's time to pick up the pace a little bit with the outros. A lot had to happen, and what didn't happen will affect the overall grade, but there still were a ton of players that found the door or were, as I said before, pushed with 2 hands on their back. So many of the grades involved in the outros have to be concerned with the loan or the sale itself. Because, I gotta be honest, while I've tried to see at least the team that these players went to at least once or twice, I try to watch as much football as possible, I'm no expert on their landing spots. Like for example, I'm giving a B to Samu Umtiti to Lecce with that loan deal. Just having him go somewhere to play football and a place that paid even a cent of his salary, that's a positive. That's why a B, it feels too high, but I have no way of knowing what the market was for him. Realistically, there was no market for some of these players, so finding a home for them at all was a positive. However, and this is a big however, this deal for Umtiti turns to a D or an F if in a year's time he hasn't recouped any of his value. The club is biting the bullet on his contract. If nothing changes, Umtiti would be the 5th highest paid player on Barca this season, ahead of Lewandowski, Ansu, and Jules Koundé. I mean, it's not the fault of the current administration or anybody involved in the club, but God, I don't know, man. Bartomeu. That's it. Bartomeu. And speaking of Bartomeu, while it did happen months ago, Felipe Coutinho to Aston Villa for a transfer fee. Yeah, that was this window. Can you believe it? It was 20 million euros back in May. And I'm giving this move an A without looking back. I'm not grading his initial transfer fee. His time at Barca, none of it. just what Barca got for him and the move for him. With the restructuring of the short-term debt, Barcelona has officially paid off Coutinho in full, gotten something back for him, and you should do the same thing I did many years ago. Like an ex, don't see how they're doing. Don't call, give them space, let them live their life, and hopefully Coutinho can live his best life in the Premier League. Down to the Championship, Minaj to Watford on a free transfer, that's getting a C+. It's a shame that Barca couldn't really get anything for him, and so far it looks like he's nothing more than a substitute. Would Barca have been better to extend him and get him on a loan somewhere else? Honestly, with all the other business conducted, I can't imagine any of the suits fielded that many phone calls or had that many meetings about Minaj. Moussa Wagué also left on a free transfer to HNK Gorica in the Croatian First Division, and he's already made 4 appearances. That alone, him being back on the field, gives this move a B+. After seemingly seeing his career end after a horrific injury out on loan, he's finally back on the field after 2 years and still just 23 years old, and I really wish the best for Wagué. Turning 23 in December is Trincao, and he's going back to Portugal. It's a loan move to Sporting CP with an option to buy. There was no way that Barca can possibly recoup what they spent on him, but that's not what this grade is for. I'm giving this loan move a B+, because Sporting CP is still a top side in Portugal, and a move home should be good for Trincao after getting lost in the wilderness at Wolves. Here's hoping he can get back to who we thought we all saw when he was at Braga. Speaking of lost in the Premier League, Neto has moved to be the starter at Bournemouth, but so far through 4 games, he started the last one, but was on the bench for the first 3. The 33-year-old left Barca on a free after having his contract mutually terminated, and that was done so Barca could save on his salary. But this one gets a C, and it maybe should be lower, but I'm frankly a bit surprised that there was no market for a goalkeeper with his resume. Fortunately, the club did get a transfer fee for Oscar Mingueza, who left for Celta de Vigo for about €5 million. Early returns for him haven't been good, he's played just 1 minute, but over the season, he should get his chance with the Galician side. From the Barca side of this deal gets an A, because that's more than a fair transfer fee for a player that was, at 23, basically out of the team sans the Frankfurt game, and who knows how much more he could possibly give. In bigger news, Riqui Puig left Europe for MLS, coming to the United States to play for the LA Galaxy. While he did leave on a free transfer, there is a sell-on fee, and since I have had the good fortune of watching every minute he's played so far in MLS, that sell-on fee is looking more and more encouraging with each game. And being that he's still just turned 23, his eventual return to Europe could be more lucrative than we first expected. And that move, while it seems puzzling to those in Europe or abroad, it gets a B for me. It's a good place for him to reset his career, and again, I think that fee, or the sell-on fee that Barca might get, could be lucrative. Also coming to the Americas was Dani Alves, who was given his marching orders to Pumas on a free transfer. I really don't know what to make of this. It felt weird the way the club kind of pushed him out, even though he was playing on the absolute league minimum. But then when he returned for the Gamper Trophy, it felt like the proper send-off he deserved was planned the entire time. I don't feel good about it, but I have to give this a B+. I mean, he is playing for Pumas. He's an important figure for them already. He got his nice send-off, and I don't know what else I would have wanted for him at the club. Up next is Alex Kayato, whose loan move to Elche gets an A, and I'm really hoping that grade can stick. Kayato did not have a place in this Barcelona, and instead of wasting away, he went to Elche and has so far looked like their most important offensive player. It seems like a lot is going to run through him, and his market value should be pretty fair for Barca when he returns. It's an A because if things keep going this way, his Barca dream may not come true, but he'll fetch a transfer fee, and his wages will be much higher in his next step. And at his age, that next contract will be the big one that encompasses the prime of his career. I want to talk about the next 2 loans, kind of grouping them together, but giving them individual grades. Abde went to Osasuna on loan, and that move gets an A- for me. Osasuna may contend for a European spot, and I can see him losing his spot in the rotation in January, but it being too late to be recalled and sent out again. That said, the team from Navarre, led by Chimi Avila up top, is a solid club from the top down that seems a perfect place for him to ascend. Enough quality around him where he isn't the guy, but not enough depth to suffocate all his minutes. On the other end of that spectrum is Niko Gonzalez, whose loan to Valencia started with the tiniest bit of hope, but already has me throwing out a C+. I know Carlos Soler was just sent to PSG, and that opens up minutes for Niko, but I'll believe it when I see it. There are 5 midfielders, 5 midfielders on that roster right now. Niko, my guy Yunus Musa, Es Moriba, Andre Almeida, and Hugo Guillamon. All 5 players that really intrigue me for one reason or another. It would be a lot of fun to see how this all works, but again, this is Valencia, who just cleaned out part of their front office with days left in the transfer window. And I hate the fact that Niko may get caught up in all that chaos. And I think the club, not maybe too proud to bring him back in January, but might hope that he can play his way into contention. If Niko is good enough, he'll be a starter anywhere in the Liga with the exception of Real Madrid and Barcelona, but I'm just worried that this is going to hurt his development. Clement Langley to Tottenham, this probably started out as an A- on paper, but I've already had to downgrade it to a B. It doesn't seem like the 27-year-old will play much, which means the loan won't be permanent, which means Barca are back with him in the contract until 2026 next summer as well. And next year he'll make just as much, but both be a year older and had his market value take another hit. Why this still gets a B is that initially it seemed like Spurs wouldn't be covering his entire salary, but everything since indicates that they are, and that's where the real win for Barcelona lies. And some might be accusing me of maybe putting this one off a little bit. I didn't want to have to bring it up, but yes, Serginho Dest is gone from FC Barcelona, AC Milan on loan with a €20 million buy option. This marks his end at Barcelona pretty much no matter what. If it's so disastrous that Milan don't even buy him for $20 million to sell him on, then he's obviously below the Barca level again. And if he succeeds at all, he's gone for all those reasons I just mentioned. It still feels too early to give this a grade. It is just a loan, and having talked to a Milan friend, he is skeptical about where his profile would fit for the Italian club. This could go poorly, and then I'm stuck watching the World Cup being sad about this shell of a player that came to Barca with, at least for me, pretty decent expectations. My gut says B- on this. With the market for defenders and young fullbacks in particular being absolutely bonkers, just $20 million for Dest seems low. While many are out on him at Barcelona, sure. It seemed like Bayern still were looking at him very recently, and I can't believe the market for him is so low. I think they shuttled him out so quickly because they had to make all the other salary work. And it had to be Dest because he never did enough to merit keeping him around. I'm not arguing that. But I just don't think the club really had their due diligence to find a proper spot for him. And to make it more difficult, Dest didn't really want to go. And speaking of not wanting to go, Martin Brotheway to Espanol on a free transfer. This is a C-. I felt like Alemany would get off the phone, likely with Man City again, and look outside the window and see a Danish flag and go, dang it, we still have to figure out how to unload Brotheway. And the grade is because it took so long. And that's on the player too. I think he went to Espanol to stay with his family in the city, something I don't blame him for at all. But if that's what he was going to do and forego more money elsewhere, then why didn't he choose to mutually terminate his contract sooner and get a full preseason in? Puzzling timing to me, but maybe somebody can explain it to me like I'm an emergency transfer that doomed an entire club to the cellar of Spanish football. Poor Leganés. And lastly, for the first team, Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang for €12 million plus Alonso to Chelsea. This is absolutely an A+ deal. Getting a fee in a player for somebody over 30 who came in last January, took a pay cut, scored 12 goals to joint lead the team, and parts with a wave on deadline day, that's perfect. It really stinks what happened to him, but Aubameyang has really rehabbed his reputation with his time at Barca. And getting this deal done, considering the broken jaw and the break-in and everything he's been through this last week, that's a level of mental toughness and professionalism most of us could only dream of having. Alright, now warp speed for those Barca athletic moves that will impact the first team. Ferran Jucla went to Club Brugge for €5 million, and this is a too early, but I'm doing it anyway, A+. 5 goals and 7 appearances to start life in Belgium. Remember, he came to Barca B last season on a free from Espanol B at 22. Played some in the first team and goes for €5 million. Then hits the ground running. Great business for Barca, so far a great move for Jucla. Miko Marmol, the 21-year-old center-back, joined his friend Hunter Orellana, who was released on a free along with 13 other Barca B players this summer, at Andorra in the second division. 50% of his rights and a buyback clause give this one a C+. Not getting a transfer fee for him is a bit disappointing. I would have even preferred a loan, but maybe the club didn't see the same things last year that some of us did. Arnaud Comas to FC Basel, also on a free transfer, that one gets a B+. Barca probably should have extended him last summer, and they may have gotten a fee, but with 9 appearances already in Switzerland, it seems like Comas the player made the right choice. Mateus Pereira also left for Eibar for €1 million, and I'll throw a B that way. 1 million is 1 million. There have been a ton of players arriving to Barca Athletic, and I'll have to talk about them in another video. We don't really have time to do that, so I'm just going to speak about the 3 moves that I feel like could affect the first team. Re-signing Chus Alba and Chadi Riyad gets a B+ for me, because while it's only been 1 game, those 2 are looking to be essential for Barca Athletic this season. There's probably always going to be too many players in front of them for the first team, but getting them at least locked up for this season with Barca Athletic keeps good players in Barca's system for depth. And finally, Pablo Torre. Initially, this was an A, because getting a talent of that caliber in Spain from your rivals should always be applauded. Racing Santander's best player from a year ago, the deal felt like Pedri all over again, albeit Torre being 2 years older than Pedri was. But now, due to the club having to choose between Koundé and Torre to register him and not loaning him out, he's now stuck in the 3rd division until at least the winter. At his age, this shouldn't derail him, But going from first team minutes sometimes to no times to a first division loan to just the third division, this deal gets a B-. This could very well all be forgotten, but it seems like this was a grab the asset, consider our plan for him later kind of deal. So if you made it all the way to the end, congratulations, this should feel a bit like graduation. Except the final grade is still left to be handed out to Matteo Alemany, Jordi Cruyff, and the rest of that board and sporting department. The salaries of Piqué, Busquets, Alba, Umtiti, and De Jong are weighing heavy on me, as is the lack of a proper backup for Busi and the lack of a top shelf right back. But I have to put all that aside and give this window, in totality, an A+. To be honest, it was an A+ before deadline day. Bernardo Silva, De Jong out, doesn't matter. This had to be an A+ window for Barcelona because they want to contend for trophies. With financial wiggle room that they had, getting Lewandowski, Koundé, Rafinha, renewing Dembélé, Kessié, and Christensen on a free, Pablo Torre for good value, moving off of Coutinho, Langley's salary, and finding homes for 12 total players that weren't in the plans, that's about as good as you can expect in the world of business and football transfers. For all the concessions we've seen this club make in recent seasons, and the leverage that the club would apparently just give away during meetings, Alemany and company nailed these summer transfers over and over and over and over and over again. An A+, and I'm not gonna budge. And an A+ for you too for sitting through this entire video, because now we finally get back to talking about football. So don't go too far. I hope you're not tired of me, because I'll be back tomorrow for the 5 headlines, Barcelona taking on Sevilla in what should be a pretty important match this season, even though Sevilla are struggling at the moment. But as always, until next time, Forza Barca.